What's up, everybody? Over the winter season, we're going to be doing some talks with some personalities in the watch world, and also be doing a little bit of knowledge-based stuff just to get you guys up to speed when talking about watches and when you finally get out there to buy yourself a watch. So come and join us right here for TickTalks. So, without any further ado, thank you very much for coming. Many of you have taken time out tonight, but it's at least warmer in here than it is outside. Tonight, this talk is going to be sort of a conversation between myself and Merlin Schwertner. Subsequent talks in the TickTalks are going to be personalities and a combination of information and knowledge. So we'll be doing a Watch 101 moving into the future as well, so you can find out a little bit about what goes behind watchmaking, what its history is, and what you should look for when buying watches, all that kind of cool stuff. But tonight we're going to focus on Merlin, because I asked Merlin Schwertner to come and do this because he has a very, very unique point of view in the industry. Merlin is the son of Roland Schwertner, who is the founder of NOMOS. So being a founder's son is an interesting position, and it poses some interesting questions. So you can find out a little bit more about the depth of NOMOS from his perspective. So I'd like to introduce you to Merlin, and we'll get started. So what?
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, so
before we get started, because I noticed the acoustic maybe, especially we probably, as long as we speak, the lower we're going to speak. If you guys want to move up or move closer, because I think we have some space still. If you want, feel free. And if we see that we're lowering our voices, just throw us something or something and we get a little louder. Other than that,
yeah,
that's from my side.
Excellent. Okay, and what we're going to do is we'll go through a series of questions that we've got, and then at the end there's going to be an open Q&A. So the conversation may spark some ideas and some questions, but hold off until the end, and then we'll come around and then sort of finish it all up with that. Okay.
Perfect.
Excellent.
Yeah, a comfy chair.
Yeah. Okay, everybody settled? Good. So Merlin, we've known each other for a little while now. We met for the first time in Basel when I approached you about an interest in NOMOS for many different reasons. Mm-hmm. And here we are today with quite a nice group of people. Some of our friends here have actually bought watches, NOMOS watches. So I think there's a fair number in here that are doing that. So when I first met you, I had an idea in my mind of what Glashütte was or is, and I think it's more historic than it was modern, and I think that's the tale that Glashütte is. So tell us a little bit about Glashütte and its history.
It's that is a good approach, because you have in Glashütte you have kind of thing. You have both things. You have a very historical and the background of it, but also what's going on now, which is kind of the modern take or modern changes that are taking place in Glashütte. And from the history perspective, you have to know that it's in watchmaking there started in 1845. So it has a long tradition of over 170 years of watchmaking. But different to like other places or other countries, we had let's say ruffled history because we had the First World War, we had the Second World War, and then Glashütte is in the eastern part of Germany. So for a long time, you didn't hear that much about Glashütte or German watchmaking by itself. And that all changed now in the 90s when the wall fell. And all these companies have been coming back to life, some of them very historical and some of them very new, like NOMOS. So you have a kind of getting back the old tradition as well as the kind of new points and technology that has been researched fairly recently.
Now, you're not from Glashütte, though.
No, I would say I'm a German born in Spain. So I'm a blend. And now I'm living in New York, getting Americanized. So I have both options.
So, when you were growing up, you didn't really have a watch influence necessarily.
Not per se, because I kind of my father always taught me and like gave me an insight, but not a forceful. Like, you know, sometimes they force you to, parents that force you to go a certain way. My father gave me always the liberty for it. So it was always a constant in my life without being a must, so to say.
So when you were growing up, what did you imagine yourself being? What did you want to be when you were a kid?
That changes. I guess it changes with different stages that you are in. I'm a history buff, so I liked archaeology a lot. After high school, I kind of went to law, criminal law. That was very interesting for me. And while doing that, I discovered more and more of the watch industry. And then I moved into the watch industry. So that was that part.
So how long have you been a part of the company?
Officially or unofficially? Because
Let's start with officially.
Unofficially, the company was found when I was 4.5 years old. So since then, I like walked around with watchmaker benches and like played with little parts or annoyed the IT guy to program me a computer game in the company or something like that.
Yeah.
And then when I was kind of growing up, I always accompanied the company during fairs, so like watch fairs or projects that I could do while in university, so that I got to learn more and more about the industry itself, and if I would like that. So I started working 2003, 2004,
Okay.
and then officially like 2011.
So what was your first job in the company?
Coffee maker, I would say, doing coffees and helping out. And then when I started after university, I did a trainee. That was like my official, so that I went through all the different stages.
Okay. So what was, within NOMOS, what was your first watch? Which was the watch that struck you that you wanted to put on your wrist?
I went on a travel with my father to Taiwan, and then it was to kind of launch NOMOS also in Taiwan and Asia, and he borrowed he borrowed me a Tangente, one of the first ones, 2 weeks, and then he took it back from me because he said, "No, you're not old enough yet." So, so my first one was when I was 18, and it was a Tangente Power Reserve and Date. Because that was in 98, and that's when it was in 2003, and that was when we launched our first patented movement with a date and a power reserve. So I got number 18.
Oh, okay. Excellent. So what was the first watch you actually remember wearing? Do you have a real memory of?
For NOMOS, it would be that one.
Any watch.
And my first watch was in Germany. We have a tradition. I don't know if you have that in Canada. It's for Easter. We have a Easter bunny, and you hide chocolate in the garden and stuff. And then on one tree branch there was a watch. So it was a swatch. I can say it.
It was a swatch. Oh. Okay.
All red, and it had black dial and date. So it was
blue hands.
No, luminescent.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Still have it.
Was there a watch influence in your young life, other than necessarily your father?
Not really, because I grew up in the countryside, so time didn't really matter that much. And I grew up in Spain, so every city has or every town has a little church and a bell, so you always have that as timing.
Yeah.
And then I grew up with watchmaking in the background. So when I would visit my father, I would see how the watchmakers would do and work on it. So more than the concept of time, I learned about like what the work it takes to do it. That's what I learned.
So with all this watch stuff surrounding you in your young life, how did you get outside of it? What were your passions outside of that?
Because it was always parallel, I was never really inside.
Okay.
So it was something that would always accompany during my life. I was just doing my stuff, and that was always there. So I grew up without that being always present, but since it wasn't a must, it was always kind of parallel.
Yeah.
So it was not until I worked in a retail store in Switzerland as a training, and saw all these timepieces and saw all these different people come together for something that they like, and maybe they wouldn't talk to each other on another situation, but they all shared that love for timepieces. And through that, I kind of learned to appreciate more what's behind it.
Are you a big hiker, water sports kind of guy?
Any sport. Any sport except like hunting and fishing.
Okay.
But other than that, I do any sport I can.
Okay. You haven't been up to Whistler yet, though, to ski?
No. Unfortunately, like just yesterday, I got my first Vancouver tour with Jason, because usually I always travel to these places, which is cool, but I don't get to see more than airports and inside of stores or malls. No. More than that.
What would you say are 3 things on your bucket list of things you'd like to do?
It also goes in phases, especially now where I travel that much. But like I said, I travel without getting a real experience of it. I would love to like have more time to enjoy that. So I love sailing, so I would really love to sail like across the Atlantic, or like do like a more extensive experience of that. Lately, a friend of mine is a lot in Mongolia, so I would love to do that. Like adventure travels. That's kind of at the moment my focus for my bucket list. So,
all in the travel realm.
Yeah, at the moment. Probably after doing that, then I'm like more on a stationary option.
So hence the belt sight you're wearing.
Yeah, at the moment, yeah, that's the one I use the most.
Yeah. Okay, so if you weren't with Nomos, what do you think you'd be doing?
When you're doing something that you like, you never consider doing something different. But if I would be, I grew up in Spain on a little island. So either you really want to get away from that island, which now I really managed, or you want to stay there. So I probably would do something on that island, like to make it known, or since I'm a history buff, maybe something related to that. So
it's an interesting thing that you grew up in Spain. The company's in Germany, in Eastern Germany. And so your dad's a pretty dynamic guy. He's obviously traveled quite a bit.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your dad and what drives him.
Well, besides of him sending me to exile now, because he sent me to the States, he's always been very active and many different interests and projects that he would follow. So that has kept him going always. And if you would ask him about Nomos, he would say, oh yeah, I started this and I wanted to do this for 5 years and then do something else. But that now, 27 years later, he's still focused and discovers how much you can do with Nomos and the potential that it gives him. So he keeps on with that.
I'm gonna draw back to something you let me know a little bit earlier. Now, he wasn't in the watch industry to begin with.
No, he's not a watchmaker.
He's not a watchmaker. So how did he actually go on that? What was this journey through into watchmaking?
So the journey is long, but he ended up in the 80s doing consulting, and he was doing different consulting projects, and one of them was for a German company that was M&M, and they were doing quartz watches at the time, and they were thinking, because it was late 80s, to go back into mechanics. And then he said, if you're a German company, you have to do it in glass Hütte, because he knew about Glashütte because we had some of our family that was from that region. So when he traveled there, he knew that watchmaking is kind of the thing in Glashütte and that it's so known. And that's why he said that. But given that it was 89, so the Russians were going crazy, nobody knew what was going to happen. And then he said, all right, then I'll do the project myself. And that's how it started.
So at that time, he was a photographer too.
Yeah. He was a fashion photographer and consultant at the same time, so that he actually could pay for the travels to go to Spain back and forth.
Yeah. So that's pretty interesting, because from a business point of view, he had a fairly strict linear accounting background, and then he also had a side of him that was very creative.
Yeah.
In the photography. So drifting into watchmaking, I don't think was really too much of a stretch, other than the fact that watchmaking is an unusual thing to get into.
Well, more than the watchmaking itself, so the linear helped him to understand the mechanics that are behind it. But you have to combine the visuals with it. So it has to kind of look attractive and be a good, timeless product, but at the same time it has to work from the mechanic perspective. So he had knowing both, he could combine it. So that was kind of his more knowledgeable wise.
So having this diverse background, it must make for a very interesting company, because the watches are really quite unique in many ways. I've often termed them in a very friendly way as being quirky. So there's a lot of him in the watches themselves, I think. So the culture must revolve around that within the company. So tell us a little bit about what the culture is like within the company and what it's like to actually work there.
So I think one of the things that I learned also from my father is that he's able to combine people. Like he gets people onto the table, and all of them have different aspects. And what our company kind of enables is that everybody kind of takes the projects on a personal level. So everybody's very involved, and it's not so much kind of my father's company. It's more about for everybody to get together and really. That's why we have so many employees that stay for so long and get involved, and we feel responsible socially and on a long term for their development to be involved in the company. And I think that you can read that when you visit NOMOS, you see a lot of young people, and they're all involved on a very individual, personal level. So yeah. That's maybe the biggest difference.
I've been in watchmaking most of my life, and I've stepped out a little bit, and I've seen different companies operate. And the people are a very, very important part of the dynamic and the product itself in the end. So, do you think that NOMOS has a special recipe? Do you think it's a little bit different to the norm?
Of course, I'm. You would say I have blinders on in my sense, and I'm not that objective, maybe. But I would say so. It's not a secret. It's pretty open. We're very open as a company. Everybody can come and see it. We do have internships for people to come and work for the company, like for 2 weeks, and as long as they bring an idea to Glashütte, that connects it to the outside world. But I think it's just that we're so open and give so many opportunities that really creates that ambient.
So right now, NOMOS has grown quite a bit. How many employees are there?
We started with 2.5, and well, one was part-time. I wasn't counting me. I was more like a quarter. But it's because the half was a very old-time employee. He was retired, but he was a watchmaker, and he taught our young watchmakers. So he brought the know-how that we had back to the company. And now we have like 300, almost 315. And so it was a steady growth. not as much as you would expect in today's world with IT and everything going on, but it's we are now the biggest manufacturer of mechanical movements in Germany. So we made that.
So you don't just go from 2.5 to 300 in a snap. There
No.
must have been some milestones along the way. So
Yeah.
can you give us some insight into some of the milestones?
Well, of course, I can tell you more about the later ones because I was part of it and I can see it. But looking back, the biggest one was actually doing the watches because, well, the company was founded in the early 90s, but the first watches were not out until 92. So that's 2 years of working and actually doing everything that's possible to generate those models that today still are the ones in our collection. I think then the next steps are when we started modifying the movements, when we started doing our own, when we did our patent. So all those are different milestones. For me, the biggest milestone is when we get more known. So that in the last 15 years that we've been expanding more internationally, or the last 3 years where we've been in North America and being more known. That is kind of what I like the most, that if I go to a TSA agent in the US, they already know the brand. That's like something that's a recognition right there.
So, patents and innovation.
Yeah.
So we'll get into a little bit of that because there's some interesting stuff there.
Mm-hmm.
But just scraping off the top, taking the cheese curds off. What's the biggest patent that you have that not many people actually know about? Is there one that you can sort of that comes to mind?
Well, we hold officially we hold 2 big patents, and those are for the movement modifications as a power reserve and the date, because they're integrated in the movement so that they keep it all as thin as possible. That is the biggest ones. And then the way we do maybe the recognitions, we just got ISO certified, ISO 9001. So that's a big recognition of our systems and our, for example, work together with Doctors Without Borders or something, but those are not on a technical level. It's more of a social scale.
Excellent. Now, I guess this question points out to most of the people here, because there's a sampling here of this next question. But who's drawn to NOMOS and why?
I can only speak for who I hope is drawn to NOMOS. So it's about kind of an understated feeling about the watches, that you know what you're getting with that product without wanting it to show too much, and it's about kind of a beauty in with not too many elements. So the idea of Bauhaus in the sense that less is more, and for the quality. So that is kind of what we want with that.
NOMOS is very new to Vancouver,
Yeah.
and I think this is a really good sample of the kind of people that really do like this watch, though. I guess my question is, who else out there do you think might be interested in NOMOS that these people can tell? What would typically be the demographic, really, a deeper demographic?
I wouldn't know really, because it depends. Like, you can see all ages really. It starts from when you're interested in what NOMOS stands for, and NOMOS stands for the design part that you see in it. It stands for the mechanics. It stands for what's behind the company in a more of a kind of a social value. So anybody who's drawn to that, and I don't think you can put an age tag on it or a place that you're from. It's more about values, and if you can relate to those, and if you like those.
With most organizations now, corporate social responsibility is a big part of who they are, and the kind of people that they attract. So from NOMOS's perspective, what is NOMOS's CSR?
The basic is, we say if you have it, you kind of share it as well. So what we have is we do have programs within the company and then projects outside of the company. the main insight is we pay for public transportation. If we buy company cards, we look at the CO2 emission. If we pay for education, we pay for, you say kindergarten here too?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Kindergarten, and then, or even like the food. Like we have our own canteen, and we pay for the food as long as it has a healthy component. So not only bratwurst or anything. And then we have projects outside of that, like Doctors Without Borders that we cooperate with, or if we do limited editions that sometimes that we can combine it locally, that we have projects that help outside of our community too.
Tell us a little bit about Doctors Without Borders, how that started.
So Doctors Without Borders started. It's funny. It started with actually they calling us and say, "Hey, you misused our name," because we had in Germany. There's similar to the Times in the States. It's the Spiegel, and in the back it has a column where they correct like mistakes that they had, and you can do a little story. So for months we had a little story in there. And in one of them, we mentioned Doctors Without Borders as relating to what our values are. And they were like, "Oh, you misused it and you didn't tell us." And we were like, "Yeah, but we like we like what you're doing so much. So can we not do something together with you?" And that's how the cooperation started with them, because they're a very cool organization and helping a lot of different projects in different countries. I don't know if you're familiar with them. And I think, North America, and Germany, and the UK are the biggest like donors for this organization. And it's the only one that has never been in any like mishappenings, like transportation of wrong goods on health trucks and something like that. And they're doing an amazing job. So it is also on my bucket list to someday like work with them, because you can't even do that without being a doctor. So you can like help on different projects, organizations.
Are there any other projects like that you may have coming up, or that you'd like to do?
Well, with them, it was an ongoing project. We did different limited editions with them, where each watch was $100 to Doctors Without Borders, and it was 8,000 watches in total over different countries. So we spent more than $1 million to Doctors Without Borders. More than Google in proportion, but I think that applies to everything.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
So it was nice.
So do you think that kind of stuff is an attractor to the employees that want to work for NOMOS?
That, but also I think the biggest one is, in NOMOS, you're not stuck in one project. It's not like you start at NOMOS and you have to do that for the rest of your life. You can change projects, and we like our last gift for Christmas was education. So many of our watchmakers have become engineers through working with NOMOS. So that then you work in a different position. Or watchmakers, after a while, they get tired or impatient of doing the little pieces and rather want to work on a different project. So that helps a lot. Plus maybe the responsibility that we feel for it. It's not a big corporation where you're a number.
Yeah,
so that helps.
That's actually very interesting, because when I started watchmaking, I worked for Rolex. There really wasn't that much like that you could actually do. Once a bench watchmaker, always a bench watchmaker. So you were committing yourself to that job pretty much for the rest of your life, until you retired anyway. So, I find this very, very interesting, because I'm not too sure what it's like now in most other companies, whether they do that. I know Switzerland is typically fairly kind of has this railroad culture where you get on the car and that's where you sit. You may drift around just a little bit within the company, maybe getting into a little bit more customer service, but to actually be able to do some engineering, that's pretty amazing.
Well, I think it also depends on. It's not only on the company culture; it also depends on the colleagues. Like, if you change within a company, you might, you're going to have to think, are you going to be good at the next position, or is that something that you actually like? So if the company offers you a position and the opportunity to try it out, then it doesn't mean that you have to succeed at that or not. So I think the biggest thing that Nomos does, it encourages you to try it out, and if it doesn't work out, you can still like move back to your old position or try something new. It doesn't mean that after that it's failure. So I think that is the biggest component in that sense.
This may seem like a strange question, but is there one particular job in the company that's the most sought after for people that would really love to do?
I don't think so.
Maybe it's yours.
No, I don't think that either. There weren't that many volunteers to go over. But, I think it depends on the type. So there are some jobs, and I wouldn't like, even if I want to try some of the jobs that I did as a trainee, I know that I wouldn't be as good at, or I didn't want to do it all the time. So there are different positions for every kind of people that we can attract.
We touched on a little bit earlier innovation. So let's talk about that a little bit more, about how Nomos actually innovates, because there's been, from my point of view, there's been a number of watches that stick in my head. Number one is the collaboration with Mark Braun on the Metro, and then Theodor Prenzel with the Neomatic movement. So what is the process for innovation, and how do you innovate?
So mainly we have two strings, or you could even say three. So we have an internal one that says to innovation to improve our company, in the sense of what can we do for like team projects or something that to drive our staff to be better and our colleagues to learn new things, or to be more environmental or like more efficient. That is internal, and that doesn't show as much as in the culture itself. But the two that show mainly is through design, like what can we do with our existing movements that gives it a new perspective or a new visual from the movement in the case or on the dial. That's the Metro that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So it was one of the newer models. We launched it in 2014, and that watch was used because it had our patent, it had our power reserve and our date, with then a new technology, which was our swing system. And the swing system, you probably won't be able to see it from there, but I brought it and you can take a look later. It's our hairspring. So it's thinner than your hair, so you probably can't see it, but it's the heart of the watch. So that was a technology that we were able to do ourselves. Or, like you said, with Theodor Prenzel, he worked for 3 years on a new movement that is as thin as 9 stamps, for example. So that was a big innovation as well. And we always have to combine both. So if you have a new movement, what watch are you going to build around that movement? Or if you have a new design, what movement are you going to put in it? So, and those things work always together.
Theodor, I'm sure, was within the watch industry already.
And he got, if I'm right, we got him right off university.
Okay.
So
as an engineer.
As an engineer, he did his thesis on Nomos. So and part of the swing system was part of his thesis. So we have a lot of engineers that we kind of combine their project with our company, and then offer them to stay. Hopefully, then they accept.
Mark Braun, on the other hand, was certainly not from the watch industry. He's an industrial designer. Yeah.
So he's a product designer, and that's what we need too, because we have our own design kind of company, and we need that platform to get new, fresh ideas in it. Well, we also hire people from university for our engineering process. For the watches, we need fresh ideas that are from outside, so that we kind of get a new vibe and a new kind of version of it.
You touched on your design company. Yeah. The Berliner Blau.
Mm-hmm. The blue from Berlin.
How did that actually come to be?
So the main thing is you cannot get a watchmaker out of Glashütte and you cannot get a designer to Glashütte. So we kind of had to find a balance where we get new ideas, and the best place for that in Germany is Berlin, because you have all this input, like Sony moved there, music industry moved there, a lot of art, a lot of different designers. So you have kind of a melting pot of ideas, and we did kind of a platform for independent collaborations. So we did that in Berlin. And after a while, it became so big that we kind of made it an own company. And we have now 35 employees that are always there, and only with one customer, which is NOMOS, but they do everything that's around NOMOS. So even literature, they did an encyclopedia with all around NOMOS, so that you have things like that. We even did a magazine. Number 1 was places where nobody wants to travel to, and number 1 was Glashütte. So, so we had different things, and I think we printed like 50,000 copies. So it was nice.
Why wouldn't anybody want to go to Glashütte? It's such a picturesque place.
Yes, and it got more picturesque now, but this was 2002. And you have to, it's Eastern Germany, so it was very grayish area, and there's not much going on, still not now. There's no hotel, there are 2 restaurants, which you can go between 12 and 2, because after that it's closed. So it's not much. It's more of, in Germany we say Schrebergarten, which I don't know if, difficult to translate. But it's a culture where everybody has this house, and then they have like a little, like a place where they can grow vegetables or something. So they have a little house, they also like a garden house maybe. So it's more of a backyard community, and you don't tap into that very easily. So I lived there for 2.5 years, and I don't have that many people that I can still call.
You guys have the train station.
Yes, that too.
How did that come to be?
Well, Glashütte is in a valley, so you don't have that many options to build stuff. You have to use what's there. And the railway station was such a nice, emblematic building. It's right in the center. And we kind of remodeled it and made it look more modern. So actually, I think I'll have it in the catalog, so you'll see a picture.
Jeez. You were able to take over the train station because people didn't want to travel there by train. It was just a no-go zone.
No, well, the train still works, but it only goes once an hour. So It's not that much, and it's only regional. So only like kids use it to go to school, or like people use it to go to Glashütte to work, and we pay for the ticket.
All right. Let's step back a little bit again. When was the decision made to, and why was it made to make in-house movements? Why didn't you carry on with movements made by other companies?
I don't think it's a decision that has to be made, because either you're a watchmaker or you're not. So it was more of an idea of when will we be able to do them. So it's from an idea, like my father was always, he always wanted to do it. It's just a question of when you're able to. So you have to build yourself in that direction. And that's a part of our DNA too, that we always want to know how to do it so that we control the quality. We can guarantee that our prices remain the way they are. So that's why it was a given. It was just a question of when.
Are you vertically integrated? Like, how vertically integrated are you?
95%. So almost more, but it's talking on the movement. We are a movement manufacturer. So we do everything that we can around the movement. We don't do the rubies, we don't do the glue, we don't do the metal, but anything else that we can do, we learn how to.
So how do you decide what to make? So going back to Berliner Blau, which is the design center for NOMOS, how do they make decisions there? You've got a lot of creative people in a room at any one time.
Yeah.
Creative people are creative. They have nothing but thoughts and ideas.
And a lot of them.
So who pulls it all together, and how do you decide that one particular thing is what you're going to run with? Like, for example, the the new dials for the
Silver
at
Cut?
work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's both. Not only we have our designers having ideas, we also have the engineers. So sometimes we would have an engineer coming and say, "Oh, look, I have this idea," and you're like, "Yeah, but what am I going to do with that? Or how am I going to integrate that in a watch? Or how can I then combine it with a design?" So you have to make a decision of when it's the right time. Like our gold pieces, for example, we had the know-how for a long time, but we didn't launch them until much later. And the same for the design. Sometimes you have the Metro is an example of we had a draft, it looked amazing, it standard for everything we wanted, kind of classic and modern, and it combined that movement that we wanted. So it was a perfect fit, and within almost months we had a watch. And other ones, they're still in the drawer because we're still like tweaking and making it right. And sometimes an idea from 3 years ago may look much different now than it was looking back then. So you have to combine it, you have to see how the feedback would be.
Is it a democratic process?
Definitely.
Yep.
It has to be.
So if you have two colors of yellow, how do you decide what the dial is going to be?
That's a harder question, but so the fun thing is Nomos. We have Berliner Blau, which is a design company, which its own CEO, which is doing the trade marketing and the idea where the brand stands. And then we have another one that is Nomos Glashütte, which does all the production of it. And then still my father's kind of between both. So it's more of a process of those three kind of getting together.
Does he have the final say?
Depends. It's democratic, so
Okay.
it could be 1 to 3, like 1 to 2. It depends.
Yeah. Okay. When you decided to make the swing system, you said earlier on that it was just something that you kind of had to do. That's a very big undertaking.
Yeah, it took us 7 years to do it.
So how was that prioritized? Because that you've got a lot of money that's involved with doing that.
Yeah.
You've got to have a lot of backing. You've got to be really, really sure that it's the right thing to do.
Well, sometimes you don't know it until it's finished that it's the right one.
Yeah.
But it's kind of also the philosophy that drives us to know and to control that. So if we stand behind it, we have to invest in it too. Also, the swing system for, I don't know how techie you are, but the swing system, it's the heart of the watch. And there are only about 5 to 6 companies in the world that know how to do it. And there's one that, it's a Swatch Group, and they control the market. So we speaking 2014, so we started way earlier, ahead of the curve, because the industry was growing and growing, and there was the risk of not getting parts anymore. So you would be dependent on a company, and or the prices would increase or the quality would decrease. You don't know. So that's why the decision was taken much earlier in 2006, 2007, to see how we can get there. And it's you work together with different institutes, you work together with different universities, and then you have to combine the projects and make sure it works. So that was the drive. And like looking back, now the industry is suffering a little bit, so now parts are available again. But still, we are now in a place where we control the quality. If you ever put your watch in a wash machine or something, then you still get the parts. So that's important for us.
Was it a difficult decision to make a gold watch?
No, not difficult. It was just a question, the stomach ache that we had, because we had gold watches for a long time, but it was like parallel and we only did a few. The stomach ache we had, it was the same movement, but then through the case, it became much more expensive. So we said, if we're doing a gold watch, we want to do it in a new movement. So we had then the movement, and then we said, okay, this movement is so special that we want to do it in a gold case and to give it the right fitting.
So now you have another gold model.
Yeah.
That's just come out. The price point is a little bit less. So it's quite a bit more attractive if you were thinking about gold in a watch to buy, and it's stunning, I have to say.
Thank you.
It really is. So Nomos to me has always been a company that's been very, very fair to its customers in trying to offer the highest quality product for the least amount.
Well, fair or reasonable.
A reasonable amount. So I think this is a fairly good move on Nomos's part.
And it has a little accent to it because our watches this year become 25 years on the market. So it was kind of our small jubilee. We didn't celebrate it like other companies maybe do, but we wanted just to give a special watch with that idea. So as an option, if anybody was like considering it, it's a rose gold Metro, and it's our first automatic with a gold movement, with a gold case. So that was a little extra. What we're known for is our stainless steel, and that's what we continue doing. But as a little, in Spain we say a dot on an I, like a little extra.
What's Nomos achieved that you're most proud of?
I think the continuity that we have, it's what I like the most, because you look at a Tangente from '92 and then you look at a Tangente now, and it hasn't changed that much except for the inside, so that we're able to do all those parts and all those movements ourselves. That is something that I'm really proud of, and that before I was flying myself like from Spain to Germany, and I was flying alone on the plane, and they would ask me, "Oh, where are you going?" or something. I'm like, Glashütte, and Germans didn't know where Glashütte was. So, and that has changed now, and that I like a lot.
So conversely, what are some of the challenges? Is your dad a challenge, working for your dad?
Well, I think I can speak for everybody that it's not always easy working with family, especially so close. But I like it because it brought us together in a way too. So, and of course, sometimes what's frustrating with him is like already, I have an idea or something, then and I tell him or something, and he's like already 9 streets ahead. So I'm like, I'm still going behind. So that's something I can learn from him.
Well, obviously he trusts you quite a bit because he's entrusted North America to you in some ways.
Well, he sent me far away, so it depends. It depends how you look at it. But I think, I think we can speak. I mean, we have a very close connection, and we talk a lot to each other, and that's definitely something.
So has North America been a challenge for you personally? Is it like when you first got out there, was it just like, wow, this is just too daunting? Like, what were your thoughts when you got on that plane to come out to North America and start pioneering Nomos here?
I was lucky because it was a gradual process. So I came before already, and like we gradually had grown some accounts already, so that I came for trainings and got to see it. Plus, I had an exchange here in the States already, so I kind of know a little bit the States, and kind of I like a lot of things, and there are some things that maybe I don't agree that much.
So you had an exchange. What did you do?
I got sent to Pensacola, Florida, so I got to see. That's like next to Alabama, so I got to see a lot of the states that maybe you don't see that much, and definitely not in New York.
Yeah.
But I got to see both, so there are a lot of things that I like, and it's definitely a challenge because you talk about something and a product that you might like or you see, but you don't know anything about. And maybe what I like so much in the States or Canada, that's a very open approach to it. Like, people ask questions and they're not as biased or as closed as maybe I could say for Europeans. So
yeah. Is it hard for a European company to do business in the US, philosophically?
I don't think so. As long as you have a good idea and a good approach and you're open about it and you actually do what you're saying that you're doing, that's what everywhere people measure you by. So if you stand by your word and are behind it, I think actually maybe North America is even more open for new ideas, new business than Europe.
Okay. What external forces, from your perspective, are challenging for the industry as a general? What do you think is something that most watch companies need to look out for, and what are they battling?
I can only speak for NOMOS, but from my perspective, is how to keep a product that is fairly, like today's with technology and everything, it's not needed for the technology it provides. It's not for the service that you want to watch. So you have to keep a motive or a reason to make that attractive for you. That's the main, I think, challenge, and different approaches, because it's not just about reading the time. It's about what's behind it too. So I think it's the main challenge.
Where do you think the industry might be in 10 years? Where do you think Nomos might be in 10 years?
Again, I can. Oh, I can only. We had already Tourbillon. We made it already, but it's. I can only say where would like us to be, and again, I would like to see that continuity that we have. So, with the same values that we incorporate, hopefully with the same team that we have now, but with new people. Additionally to it, not exchanging them, and being more in new markets, that people know us a little bit more and cherish the product as it is.
So where would those new markets be?
Well, definitely in North America, because that's kind of where I see a continuity. I see some parallels to the values that we have. I cannot speak so much for Asia. I don't know the market as much, but I definitely see potential there. And Europe, of course, we're still only growing internationally in the last 3 years. So that's where I see kind of the more pull for us.
Mm-hmm. So, tell us what's new. What's actually new with the product that you've brought with you?
So the same kind of the continuity that I'm saying for the company itself. So I've showed the new movement. It's the new Neomatic, the DUW 3001, and what we provide with this is a thin, elegant, automatic movement. So that is what we wanted to provide in the new collection. And before, the watches that we had were kind of smaller because we wanted to show thin and how small we can be. And the new watches, it's based really on the watches you've already seen. It's our classic, the Tangente, but as thin as possible, being automatic. So that's the main new release that we had, larger size, and what I like the most. So I don't know if you can see it from where you're sitting, but it's a new dial. It's a brushed silver dial, and the idea behind it is just to add a new visual for these watches. But because we're used to see watches that shoot you to the moon or going diving or whatever, which you can do on the weekends, but during the week you want to wear something that stands for the same, like the work that you're doing, the quality and kind of the, we say more in Germany, we say more success shows through understatement. So that's kind of the idea that we had with these watches. But you can take a closer look in a second. So I have these.
So how many new pieces are there?
The pieces itself are the models that our collection is based off. So you have the Tangente, which is our first model that we had. We had the new Metro from Mark Brown. We have the Square, the Tetra. And we have the Orion, which is the one with the domed glass. So we have a few here for you to see.
Yeah, the silver dial is stunning.
Yeah, I really like it.
Especially on the Metro. The styling on that dial is absolutely fantastic. So you guys can have a look at that in a bit. But that's kind of all the questions I've had for you so far.
Was thorough.
So thank you very much
Thank you.
for answering those. But I'm sure there are probably some questions from our audience today. Is there anyone that wants to ask a question?
Yeah, young people today sort of fix with smartphones that can tell the time. There's new technologies coming in, wearables,
Yeah.
timepiece. Do you see a threat to your market from those younger generations? And also,
So if I could just so everybody can hear it, I'm just going to throw that back out there. So it's a question about the threat of smart devices on mechanical timepieces.
Maybe not so much a threat. It's a constant challenge for us to create a product that people feel attracted to. Doesn't matter kind of the age. Of course, younger demographics, it's different just approach wise. But we've experienced that even though you have so much technology around, sometimes you want to escape it too. So if we are able to reach out and show that through Nomos you have a chance to kind of appreciate it more and take a step back from it, what better reason to not wear an iWatch than to wear Nomos, for example? That would be my take on it. So, and I quite have I did a speech at Facebook in July, for example, and there actually were a lot of them wearing an Nomos. So you kind of have both. They're not how you say, like they don't take each other out. So you can still combine them. So hopefully.
I'm finding too that it's not that unusual for people to be wearing both at the same time. So you'll have somebody wearing an Apple Watch, and then the watch they really like on the other wrist. So I think one is purely for connectivity at that point, and the other is then that homage and that to that art piece that's on their wrist.
Plus, it brings back for a long time people were not even wearing anything. So now it brings back an attention to the wrist that there wasn't before. So but now people are looking and then measuring too. What kind of timepiece are you wearing? Any more?
sure.
Yeah, Kendall.
Not a question on Nomos, but a question about the industry. So for independents, we're seeing challenges in the industry. So the Bethune was bought out, or they sold. Breitling as a larger one was sold. And so, what's your take on the independents, on the just industry of independents?
Yeah.
And where do you see where the pitfalls that and people sell for different reasons, or so it's not necessarily the problem, but where do you see the pitfalls as an independent so that you can escape these perhaps other pressures?
Yeah. It's tough. It's definitely tough. I mean, the market is very controlled. I mean, there are 3 big groups and 2 big independents, and they control most of the market. And it's very hard for yourself as an independent to kind of find a niche or kind of a space for yourself. And that will always be a challenge. What changed too is from the production. So before it was even difficult to get parts. So that was a big risk a couple of not that long ago when Swatch Group says, hey, no more pieces. So that was a big challenge too, because being independent, it means you have to invest all these for yourself. So I mean, even the swing system for us, it was, I don't know if I do the conversion right, but it was about 18 million Canadian that we did and invested without increasing prices, so that we invested that for the long term. So any independent has to fight with that. So that will continue being a challenge. I think one of the threats, though, that has passed, because the industry is a little shaky, is that the risk of being bought out. So that has been calmed a little bit, which is a good thing, I guess. Unless you were wanting to sell.
So building on that,
Yeah.
what's the ownership of Nomos, and is it a family owned? Is there succession in the plan?
So it's it's a GmbH. It means and it's a KG, so it's a Kommanditgesellschaft, meaning that the family behind the company is actually there with their own goods. So we don't have to publish like names or anything, but I can tell you it's only five shareholders, and the main shareholder it's kind of my family. So, and if I would have to say a crown prince, it's the CEO. It's Uwe Arendt, it's his name. He has been with us for 17 years. So if any succession, I would see it in that direction.
So private, limited company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where did the name come from?
Nomos? So Nomos is a Greek name, and my father, when he went through the records, he went to Glashütte in '89, just after the wall fell. And he went through the different records because, you know, when you do a company, you have different options. Do you take an existing name? Do you build on that? Or do you take a complete new name? And he found one name, and it was Nomos. So there existed a Nomos before. It was the 1910s, and we don't have any relation to that company, but he liked the name. Because the name Nomos means kind of balance, order, right distribution. And the idea behind it is to say that he wanted a cool looking design that doesn't fade out of time and with a good quality movement in the back at a good price point. So those are the three things, and they still guide us, and that's why he liked the name. So that's where it comes from. Sure. And the SA, it's not for Society Anonymous or Anonymité, it's for Saxony. So you see it also in other companies like Lange & Söhne SA. We took it out of our logo because many confounders thought it was French.
No. Did you have to choose a name that was from Glashütte?
No, you don't. Though to have Glashütte in the company name and on the dial, you have to produce there. So it's like champagne that can only come from one region, or Murano glass, or ham, Parma ham. So it's the different. You have to do it there. So it's you need to do at least 50%, and hopefully there's changes to increase that. That would be ideal.
Is that quite different to Switzerland?
Well, they did a cool thing a couple of years ago, and they increased the Swiss made from 50% to 60%. But that's for Swiss made. So in Switzerland, then you still have different ones where they say Genève. So in some brands you have Genève, similar to Glashütte, but they have like their own quality stamps and different processes in that direction. Mm-hmm. We have one that is Glashütte, and that applies to all the companies in Glashütte.
Excellent.
Sure. Any more? Yeah.
What's your favorite Nomos?
Well, you were asking probably the most biased one in the room, but I just bought the Silver Cut, so I just got the Metro, which I like a lot. But it goes in phases. So sometimes now at the moment I'm wearing the I don't know if you know the Weltzeit, the wall timer. So well, especially in your big country, because you have so many time zones. I don't have that problem in Germany, but so you can click around and go to the different time zones. But yeah, the Ahoy I like a lot. Actually, the smaller one, not the bigger one. So depends. Which one is yours? Okay. That's the challenge. That's the challenge. So yeah, but that's a cool problem to have, though, because sometimes with companies, sometimes especially companies that do different products, you're like, oh, I like this, but how could they do that? So I like to hear that a lot, because it means that, I mean, you might not like the Ludwig as much or the Tetra because it's square, but you still look at it and say, it looks good and it looks nice. Not for me, but it looks nice. So it's important for me.
Now you have limited editions as well.
Yeah, gives an option to personal.
Yeah. So are there Nomos limited editions and then other limited editions, or?
So both. The Doctors Without Borders is a Nomos limited edition. Actually, I brought one but I can show it later. It's basically, it has a red 12 and black hands, and where it says made in Germany, it says Doctors Without Borders. And then in the back, it has an engraving. So that was a limited edition kind of made from Nomos. But then sometimes we have corporate customers. So if they have a big company or even a smaller company that they say, I want to do something for my top clients or for maybe top employees or something. Or for, we do the watch for Siemens, for example. So you're going to have to work a long time at Siemens, but it's 40 years. If you work at Siemens, you get a Nomos.
40.
And 50, you get a gold Nomos. So, but times are changing. But still, they have, I think, 230,000 employees.
Yeah.
And so it's quite a few that stay there a long time. But and then, yeah.
I'm a little familiar with German, having traveled there.
Okay.
So, I'm almost curious about the German perspective beyond Germany. So, since you're in the industry, and because watchmaking is so diverse now, I mean, there's definitely a lot in Switzerland. There's also a lot happening in Japan.
Yeah.
And stuff happening in China. So, you as a German, what brand or what country do you respect in terms of what they're trying to do?
I wouldn't go by country, I would go more by the product itself. So if it's well made, and then we say touche, like awesome, perfect, the more the better, because then you kind of generate that interest in different countries as well. That would be my take on it. And definitely, like, we wouldn't be where we were without the Swiss industry. If you know Glashütte, there are 11 companies in Glashütte. The biggest, Lange & Söhne, is owned by Richmond, which is Swiss. And then Glashütte Original is owned by Swatch Group. The big foundation in Glashütte, there's a museum. It was done by Swatch Group as well. So we do thank a lot to the Swiss to support the region and give that know-how as well. And as you mentioned, Japan, Grand Seiko does an amazing product with all the know-how, everything integrated. So that's awesome. So the more the better, from my perspective. Healthy competition.
Any other questions?
No? If not, or if you even have independent question or want to approach me, other than that, I can pass a little bit the watches around so you guys can take a look. And anything you can think of, just let me know. It's fine. Easy evening. No.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
It's been a real pleasure to start this off with you. Thank you.
Thank you.